Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Raising Confident Girls. I am Melissa Jones, and I am so happy you're here today because this week we are celebrating moms and the mom-daughter bond. Now, if you are not a mom and you're thinking, what would this have to do with me? Think about your role in a mothering type of situation with a girl in your life. So this could be an auntie, this could be a friend. And, I definitely as a teacher felt like a mother figure to my students. And so no matter what role you play or what relationship you have with your own mom, whether she is still with you or not, or whatever the circumstance, this is a great episode to think about your role and how you can show up in your mother-daughter relationship, in your mothering type of relationship. So that's what this week is all about. And before we get too deep into the episode, I want to thank you as usual for being here and for all of you who are sharing this podcast with other moms, dads, caregivers of girls, anyone who wants to have positive impact in girls' lives, even teachers or whoever. So if you have someone in mind that you're like, you know what, I think they would really like this podcast because it would be helpful. They have a lot of influence with girls, or even if it's one girl in that person's life and you know that they could use a resource, I would love it. And it would be the biggest gift to me if you would share this with the person that you're thinking about right now. And even if it's this episode or the show in general, that would just mean the world, because the intention is with this podcast to help as many people who want to have positive impact on girls' lives as possible. And you sharing this with someone would be the way to do that. So the more we get it shared to others, the more girls and more people we can help who want to have that impact. So I would really appreciate that. So if you think about your role, whether you are a mom or you're not, or you're, like I said, in any kind of relationship with the girls in your life, there are these moments that you can even reflect on in your own childhood. So when I look back at my mom and the role that she played for me, she was one of those warm adults. She was one of my safest people and still is in my life. And at the same time, there were times when there was turmoil in our relationship, and that's very normal. I mean, when you are in a mother-daughter relationship, it is very normal to have conflict, to not agree about everything. You're not going to agree with every choice they make. I know my mom didn't. And at the same time, you want to keep your bond, even when you don't agree with everything or you are having a bit of a rough patch. And so I think about this time when I was probably around 14, where I was mad at my mom because she didn't want me to stay past a certain curfew and she demanded to pick me up, and I was a teenager. And so when I got out of the car, I didn't want to speak the whole time that we were coming home. And we just kind of sat in silence, and I slammed the door really hard when I got out, when we got into the driveway, because I just felt unheard. I felt angry. I felt desperate for more freedom because I felt like I was getting older in that teen age, and I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to be treated more young adult-like. And my mom was trying to protect me because she didn't want me out at all hours of the night. So her boundary was reasonable. But in my mind, I just felt like it was such an attack. And I would slam the door, I would stomp up the stairs and do things like that. And those are very normal reactions when we are setting boundaries with our girls that we know are healthy. And it's really tempting. Like, it would have been really tempting for my mom to yell, um, don't slam that door. That's disrespectful or whatever. And I'm not saying that that never happened, because there were times that my mom lost her cool too, but it's a sign when she does those things. And sometimes the silence is the best form of support that you can give. So I don't remember exactly what my mom said to me in that moment, but I do know that there was a time where she would, in this instance or other instances, show me she was there without pressuring me to talk about it in the moment. Because when they're in that moment, it is an amygdala response, whereas it's the animal instinct part of your brain. When you're not thinking clearly, you're in that anger, frustration, or strong emotion, and you're not able to process clearly, especially kids. And so my mom would do things like make a hot cocoa and put a little note with it and just walk in without saying anything in my room. Maybe I went upstairs or wherever I was, and just sit it beside me and just say, maybe the note said, I'm here when you're ready. Or maybe she would just say, I'm here when you're ready, and just walk away. And I know that she still cared when she did those things, because even when I was pushing her away, she still showed up for me. And that's what we want for our daughters, is, and the girls in our lives, is to know, for them to know that we are still there even when they push us away. And their pushing us away isn't a rejection or a rebel phase that they're going through necessarily. It's when they're eye rolling and when they're giving us silence, it's often signs of emotional overload or a need to feel, like in my case, more grown up. And they want respect in a different way in their mind, that not letting you stay out or not letting you do the thing that you think might be a little bit too grown for them or just isn't the right thing to do in that moment feels like a rejection. Or they might be dealing with something with the friendship and they're not quite sure how to talk about it yet. And the one thing that we can do, and I'm so guilty of this, is over questioning them. And even when we don't feel like we're over questioning them, sometimes even just saying, when they're in that amygdala part of their brain, or when they're in that moment of high intensity, whether it's crying or they're mad or they slam the door, and those types of moments, even saying what's wrong can feel like an ambush. And what I've learned is, anytime that I ask what's wrong when they're in that heightened state, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't go well, because they're not ready to talk about it and they're not even processing what they're feeling in that moment. They need space before you ask what's wrong. And sometimes what's wrong isn't even the question they need us to ask. And I've made that mistake lots of times, and you learn from it, right? And so it's not that I'm saying, oh, you should never do this or this will never happen. We all make mistakes in the moment, and they do too. And what's really important is to keep trying, but to also be aware of some of these things, not as an overwhelm of like so many things that we do as a mom or as a caregiver of girls, but just as something to keep in your mind of, okay, I know that she's going to be mad at me for setting this boundary. I know I'm doing the right thing as her mom, as her auntie, as her whoever, but I know the reaction is not going to be positive. So what can I do? Like, maybe on the car right there, like thinking, what can I do? And we can't always prepare for these, because sometimes we're blindsided by just an emotional reaction to something that they've been processing internally and we don't even realize it. But if you can, just think about ahead of time, I'm going to wait to ask. Or sometimes it can be where you're having inconsistent check-ins or touch points. So this often happens when you are really busy, and there are busy seasons, especially May. If you're listening to this in real time, it is May, and May can sometimes be one of the busiest times of year, because sports pick up, after school things pick up. It's the end of the school year. If you're in North America, it's getting to the end of the school year. And so those things can all be heightened. And if you're not listening in America or in North America, you can think about, what is that time of year for my girl where things can be heightened like that. And how can I check in with her more consistently than I normally do? Or how can I still make sure? It doesn't necessarily have to be that you do it more, but how can I make sure I'm still checking in with her? Because when we have these inconsistent check-ins or touch points, it can really make it seem like your relationship is drifting away and she's pulling away from you. And those types of things in development and child development can ebb and flow because they're trying to find their independence. They're trying to figure out who they are at age, fill in the blank. But what we can do to help stop that is, or to keep that bond, is to make sure that we have consistent rituals where we're checking in, even if it's in the car, driving to a sport, or if it's in the morning or at bedtime, whenever that is for you, is making sure that you're still checking in, even if she doesn't seem open to it, and doing it in a way that is very low pressure, and just letting her know that you're there is very, very important. And so, what I want to do today is give you some tips that you can use. I'm going to give you 5 tips that you can use to stay close to your daughter, stay checked in, and repair when things don't go well, because that's part of parenthood. Is not everything is going to go perfectly, and it's not supposed to, because life isn't like that. And so I want to equip you with some things that could help, because I think that these things have made a big difference in my parenting life, and you can think about them in relation to your own daughter and her age, because I'm going to give examples at different age bands or developmental levels. So the first tip is show up even when she pulls away. And, this is you offering that calm presence and no pressure to talk, which is the hardest thing, because we want them to talk to us. And it can seem counterintuitive because you're wanting them to talk to you, but when you talk too much to them, it can, especially in that tween and teenage, it can push them further away. So this isn't to stress you out about tiptoeing around or anything like that, but it's just to offer that calm presence. So, for example, at ages 6 to 8, if she storms into her room, after something's happened, maybe outside, where she's been playing outside and she just storms into her room, and maybe there was a spat or an argument with a neighborhood friend or just a sibling or something like that, and she just storms into her room and you can tell that she's not right. You can say, you can go into her room and you can just leave her favorite book open on her bed, and you can put a little note that says, here if you want to read together. If she's old enough to read like that, or I'm sure she is at 6 to 8, but you can even make it simpler than that and just say, I'd love to read with you, however you want to do it. And so that books are often such a bridge when they're young. And it's also a great way to have conversations about book characters that may be facing something. So I'm not saying you have to go through her library and find the right book for this exact situation, but even a favorite book is a comfort. And even if it is a chapter book, if you read chapter books together, then you could, I don't know, just lay it on her bed, and with a little note is being even more intentional by telling her, let's read together when you're ready. And then a lot of times that helps calm her nervous system. When you just read, you don't say anything about the storming in, you just read with her. And then after you can feel that bonding moment, then you can say, I noticed that you were angry when you came in your room. What happened? And then that's when they can be ready to talk. And why it works is because she knows you're there without feeling concerned. So you're not going in there like, oh my gosh, tell me what happened right this minute. Because again, even at that younger age, they're not always ready to talk about it right then. And they're going to normally be crying or angry, and they're still processing whatever it is that made them upset. And then at an older age, it could be, sending a quick, like a quick note. Again, I've slipped notes underneath a door before of when, same thing, she goes to a room or she goes a certain place. And this doesn't mean you only slip a note and you never say anything verbally, but I've sent a little note that said ice cream in a chat, question mark. And then I just put it there. And then if she wants to talk, she can come out, and there's no pressure for an immediate reply, or if it's a tea or a lemonade or whatever you want to say. It doesn't have to be food related, but whatever it would be that would be like an enjoyable type of snack or drink or whatever that would be for your daughter or the girl in your life, is really a good bridge because it feels like no pressure. So when you then talk, or when she comes in, you can say, it's your call. Do you want ice cream? Or, would you like a snack when she comes out? Because she may not say anything. She may just walk out after. And then you asking her, what she wants, and like to eat or drink, or if she wants to go for a walk with you or whatever it is. And that is a good bridge because it gets her out of that mode of the tornado of thinking, is what we call it in Girls Positivity Club, because you tend to keep replaying whatever the thing is that's upsetting you. And you're trying to search for an answer, but sometimes when they don't know how to solve it, or they're just overwhelmed with all the emotion of it, they don't know how to make it stop. And so sometimes a pattern interrupt, like you offering to go for a walk or to have a lemonade together or to whatever it would be, is a good way for her to know that you're there and you're that safe person, but that you're not going to right away say, tell me everything and tell me what's going on, because it'll naturally come out. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. At least you're that calm presence for her in that moment. And eventually it'll come out later anyway, is what I've found. And then when they get a little bit older, like 12 to 14, you can just knock on their door or whatever it would be and just say, I'll be on the porch if you want company, or I'll be on the couch if you want company, and then just give her space, or I'll be wherever you're going to be if you want company. It's that open offer. And then if she comes out there and just stands, sometimes they'll do that and they just stand there and they don't really know how to start the conversation. Even if you're really close, then you can just say, do you want to sit down together? And you can just sit, and whatever comes up is how it comes up. You can just start talking about what you've been doing that day, and you start the conversation, not even about what it might be that she's upset about. And then you can just say something like, how's your day been? And then she can decide to tell you or not. Or you can say something like, I'm noticing that you're having some strong feelings. If you want to talk about it, we can. If you want to talk about other things for now, that's fine too. So it's just being that calm presence. And even as they get older, that 15 to 18 age, you can send them even a voice note if they have a phone. And you can do this at other ages if they have phones too, and just send them a voice note and say, I'm thinking of you. I just want to let you know I'm here for whatever you need. And that's it. And a lot of times that's the open door that they need to talk to you. That's the opening that they need. The next tip is to own your imperfections. So I am a big believer in repair when things don't go well, because there are going to be times when you do lose your temper, or you are disappointed in the way she's acting because you are that safe person for her and she's treating you poorly, or she's said something disrespectful in the moment because she's so upset about what happened, or she yells like, you'll never understand, or something like that. And you can kind of lose your cool as well, and maybe say the wrong thing or yell, or just not handle it the way that you had hoped. I know I've done that so many times. And so you're modeling healthy repair. So owning your imperfections and modeling that repair is so, so important. So the way that looks at the 6 to 8 age is, if you accidentally, let's say there's a paper that she was saving for something. I've heard this before in the classroom. It doesn't necessarily have to be homework, but maybe you were on the phone and you needed to jot something down and you wrote it on her art project on accident because it was turned over and you didn't see that the other side was her art project. Or just something that was accidental, or you interrupted when she was in the middle of practicing her music and she was recording it because she wanted to show it to her friends. And to her, it was a big deal, but to you, you just thought she was playing music and you went in and interrupted it and she got mad and you're like, what just happened? This seems like a very easy thing. And then all of a sudden she blows up about it, even at 6 to 8 years old, or not necessarily blows up, but just gets frustrated with you. Like, Mom, I can't believe that you drew on that or you wrote on that. That was a really important paper. That was for my project or whatever. And then, you could come in later and say, I'm so sorry that I wrote on your paper. I broke your focus, or whatever it is that that was the thing that upset them. I'm sorry that I did that. Can we sit together and draw a new picture? Or can we fill in the blank, whatever it would be? Can you play your music for me as a practice for showing it to your friends or to your grandma or whatever it would be? So just thinking about when you make a mistake, and sometimes it's completely unintentional, it's just owning it and just saying, I'm sorry that I snapped at you when I was on the phone. It was a very important call. I was feeling a lot of stress, whatever it would be. And obviously, this 6 to 8-year-old age, it would sound a little different, but you can just tell them that you messed up and maybe you shouldn't have done this or that and that you're sorry. And it doesn't mean that we apologize for every single thing we always do. Like we're always overly apologetic, because I think a lot of times women apologize so much. However, with our kids and our girls, especially, modeling owning up and being able to say that hard thing when you do make a mistake is really good. And I would argue it's good for all kids, but that's an example of a younger age. And then ages like 9 to 11, let's say that you forget to pick her up on time. I see this all the time in Girls Positivity Club, is that parents just get busy in their day, and an after school pickup to a practice or a club, if they're running late, it can feel like such a huge deal and very embarrassing to the girl, because they feel like they've been forgotten, like they're not important. Whereas you may have had a meeting that ran long and it was out of your control. And even though you might have called to tell the coach or whoever it is that you would be late, or even if you can't, that is a legitimate excuse for why you're running late. But to them, it feels like that they were forgotten. And there gets this point where I've stood with kids before, girls before, where they start to panic a little when it's past 5 or 10 minutes. They start to wonder, like, are they going to pick me up? And I know that you are, or the coach knows that you are, but at the same time, it just feels like a really, really big deal to them. And so, you saying, I'm so sorry, honey, I was running late. And I know that sounds like an excuse, but I really did try my best and traffic was bad. Next time I'll ask if I can leave a little earlier, or next time I'll have so-and-so pick you up, or you can carpool with the Joneses when I'm running late, or something like that. And also just saying, these things happen, it wasn't my intention to make you feel this way. And even asking her, like, how did that make you feel? And just talking about it and just owning it and just saying that everybody runs late sometimes, and you'll do better next time, or you'll figure out a backup plan if that ever happens again. That way she knows, instead of ignoring it and just being like, get in, hurry, we've got other places to go. Just acknowledging it, even if it's a little bit later where you've both calmed down, because you might be really worked up from being late and just feel really bad about it. And so just having that repair is important. And then at the 12 to 14-year-old age, if they are in their screens too much and you're just so frustrated and you snap at them about it, later you could say, maybe you yelled, like, you're always on your phone or you're always on a screen, and I just need you to put it away and do what I asked you to do. And fair enough, like, it probably has been several times that you've asked, but maybe in that moment you just don't handle it the way that you'd hoped, because you're feeling a lot of strong feelings yourself. And so later you could say something like, I shouldn't have yelled. Can we talk about this? I want to tell you why I was feeling frustrated. It felt like you were ignoring me when you were doing your game or when you were FaceTiming your friend. And I had asked you 5 times to get your bag ready for practice or whatever it is, and just help them understand like your point of view, but also say what you need. Like, I need you when I'm asking you to get your bag ready to do that. And I know that I yelled and I shouldn't have handled it that way. However, how can we make this better? So maybe it's even working together for a plan and having that boundary. If this does happen again, you won't be able to be on your screen during this time right in between practice. And I want you to have that freedom because I know it's your time you check in with your friends, but we also have things to do. And that's why I felt so frustrated. And it's not that every moment we can have those kind of talks, but the times when you're like, okay, this is starting to become a pattern, or this seems like a big enough deal. I feel really bad that I yelled, whatever it would be. I didn't handle it the right way. Then that's your signal to have a repair moment. And it doesn't have to take an hour. It can take 5 minutes or less. So just being aware of that and thinking about when would be those times that I want to make sure that I do repair. And then if she's a little bit older, like 15 to 18, let's say that you miss something important to her. So whether it's a certain practice where parents were allowed to, I don't know, do a certain thing, whether it's a performance of some kind, whether it's you were supposed to take her somewhere so that she could do something that she really wanted to do, especially as they're learning how to drive and they want to get their drive times in, or they want to just go to a friend's house and they're not able to drive yet. And so that was very important to them and they wanted to be there at a certain time. But same thing, maybe you're running late. And so you can say something, or like they're giving a speech and parents are invited to go and you are really busy and you're going to try to make it and you thought you made that clear and you didn't make it. And so it's saying something like, I know that I was supposed to take you here or there, or I know that I missed your speech, or I missed the play that was during the school day. That was really hard for me to make that, but can you recap it? Like, what was the highlight? And I'll make sure next time that I can at least make part of it. Or maybe someone else could go and we could do something else later, or just somehow find a way that you can make it up to her. And it doesn't mean that you can go back in time and show up to that play again, or make the speech or whatever it would be, but there are going to be times when we do miss things. And I remember an example of even people who miss senior activities. So, especially the senior year of high school and whatever that looks like, they have special events. And so there might be one that you can't make, like a dinner or some special thing that they do, and it's just not working. And it really meant a lot to your daughter, and you know that you let her down. And so it's repairing that and making sure you make the next one and just talking about it and being like, I really wanted to be there. And it crushed me that I couldn't be there because I ended up having this thing come up. And it doesn't mean that that's more important than you. I just want you to know that. And I will be at the next one. And so just having that conversation is really important. So it's owning your imperfections and being vulnerable with them about why that happened and how you felt about it, which can feel really hard sometimes to admit those things to them, or we can brush over it and think that they don't need to hear that, like they already know that you wanted to be there, but it still helps for us to say it out loud. And then the third tip is one of my favorites. It's asking them if they want help or if they just want to talk. So the number one thing that we all do as parents and people who want to have positive impact on girls' lives is offer advice too soon. So a lot of times they already know what the solution is and they just need to vent and process it. And it's really, really easy to just jump straight to the advice or want to jump in and solve the problem for them. But we just have to remind ourselves that that's not necessarily going to help them in the long run. And sometimes they just want to talk. So here are some ways that you can give her a couple of options of do you want help or do you just want to talk? Do you want me to listen or do you want advice? So at 6 to 8, if she's crying because a friend wouldn't play with her at recess, or a friend takes something from her that was hers, or rips up a drawing that she made or as a joke and she doesn't think it's funny, or says a mean thing, you can say, do you want a hug or do you want to tell me what happened? And that can be really helpful too, because sometimes they just want a hug and sometimes they just do want to talk about what happened. And you can also do both. So at that young age, it's asking her and just giving her a couple of options, and then just being okay with whatever she chooses, because you do want to get to the bottom of it and find out what happened. But again, it may not be in that moment. And then at that 9 to 11 age, if she's overwhelmed by a hard homework assignment, like a really tough assignment, and you can tell she's getting really frustrated and she might be just holding her head, or she's scribbling things out, or she's erasing a lot, or if she's doing that digitally, you can just tell when they're getting frustrated, her whole body can change and she might just look stressed. You can say, do you want me to help you solve it? Or would you like to talk about what's happening? So do you want help with your homework, or do you want to just tell me what's frustrating you? So those are really good things. So help with math or just chat, whatever that would be. So giving her 2 options, because sometimes if we give them too many options, it can be overwhelming too. And they're already feeling that way in the moment, especially when it's related to a school project or something they have to get done. They're under a deadline. And as they're getting older, that 12 to 14, it might be that they see something on social media, if they're allowed to be on it yet, or they see or hear a friend make a comment that's kind of mean or offset, like just offsetting. It just sets them in a different mindset. And it's like, why wasn't I invited? Or I wonder why she made that comment. And so it could be that she's even thinking about something that verbally was said at school. So she might start talking about it and you start to feel like, okay, is she wanting me to solve it for her, or she just wanting to talk? So then that's when, again, you say, would you like advice on how to handle it, or do you just want me to listen? So the choices are advice or listen, your choice. So you can just say it like that. And if you forget to say it in the beginning of the conversation, you can just wait and say it as she's talking and as she pauses. And she might just be venting and talking a mile a minute, or she might be really quiet, and just figure out what it is that she wants. And she might first say that she just wants to talk, but then she might ask, what would you do? And then that's your opening. And then at that 15 to 18 age, it might be that she is dealing with a crush rejection, or it could be a friend rejection, or something that just didn't go as planned at school. And so it's the same thing as saying, like, do you want my perspective, or do you just want to vent without feedback? So feedback, or do you just want to free vent and just get it all out? So those are different ways that you can offer help, or for her just to talk. And at any age, it's really good to teach her that both are okay, because if it is something that is going to bother her longer term, it'll keep coming up. And then you can judge whether you do go ahead and offer advice. And again, she may not be open to it. So it really is best to let them decide, as long as it's not a dangerous situation. And then tip 4 is to create those small, reliable rituals, those check-ins that we talk about all the time, if you've listened to the podcast before. And the most important thing is that it's simple and it's consistent. So it doesn't have to be a million things. They can just be at ages 6 to 8. You can have, we call it in Girls Positivity Club, a yay, like tell me your yay of the day, like what's your positive. You can also call it a glitter moment. So what's your glitter moment? So each night sharing one thing that made her sparkle that's big or small. So made her feel sparkly. So when they're younger, they tend to like stuff like that. And you can just call it either a yay, or you can call it a glitter moment. Like, tell me one glitter moment from your day. And then she can tell you and you can tell her. And so even just getting in the habit of that would be really good. And then there's also space if she wants to say anything that was hard that day, but you can just keep it positive. And if you can tell that maybe it wasn't a great day, or she says, I didn't have a glitter moment today, it was kind of a hard day, then you can say, tell me about it. And so it's a quick check-in. And then at 9 to 11, it might be an after school snack. And even if it's in the car and it's same thing, it's a high and a low, or it's a glitter and a cloud, or whatever you want to call it, a yay and a nay. That's what we call it, Girls Positivity Club. So whatever that is, it's just 5 minutes or less over a snack or one of her favorite treats as you're transitioning to her next thing in her day. And it's just asking her about that. What was your high and low? What was your glitter and your cloud? What was your yay and your nay? Whatever that is. So you can adjust it to be your own thing, or what would you like to call it, and have her name it. And then that 12 to 14-year-old age, same thing. Maybe it's a Starbucks and you talk over that, or maybe it's a same thing. Like, you just decide, maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you do a small task together. Like, can you help me do this with the dogs? Or can you help me work on this for just a few minutes before we make dinner, or before we do the next thing? So it's just a small task together, and it's connection. So would you help me plant these flowers really quickly? Or would you help me, whatever it would be. And so then you're doing something together, and it doesn't have to be a chore. It can be an enjoyable thing. And then before you know it, you're actually talking. So what I found too is cooking together. So even my teenager who's 17, if we cook together, it's a connection and we end up talking. There's just something about it that happens. And it's not that we cook together every night, but it's those kinds of moments where they know we're there with them and we're just chatting. And then all of a sudden things start coming up. So you can just make a consistent time, like every this day of the week, or you can just say to yourself, like, okay, I'm going to make sure I do this 1 or 2 times a week. Or if it's every day and you just pick a different thing each day, that's very simple. And they may not always seem like they want to do it, but once they start doing that with you, then it can open up that conversation and it can help you check in. And then that's when, again, you can use that common language, especially if you're starting it really young, and the high and the low, or the yay and the nay, or the glitter and the cloud, or whatever you call it, they will know, and it'll naturally just come up as you're talking, or just you start talking about your day, and then they can do the same, whatever you want it to be. And it can literally be any activity that you do together. And then the last tip is naming what you admire in her. So catching authentic moments and praising her. And I like to get very specific when you're praising, and especially praising effort, not just achievement, because girls already feel like they have to be perfect in some ways, or they feel like that they have to achieve things to get praise. And recognizing their effort and also their character traits, and being specific, besides you look beautiful today, or good job, something like that, making it a more specific compliment, especially if it's a hard project. Like, you worked really hard on that project, I saw how much time you put into it, or you've really been practicing your skills in the backyard or in the basement. I've seen you do that, and that's really showing in your games. And so obviously we want to also celebrate them for their big moments too, but I've found that really focusing on their effort and praising them on character traits are really, really valuable. And even if we know that they already know, it still helps to hear it out loud, or even in a note. And so at 6 to age, you can think of like a sibling moment, or a friendship moment, or maybe you're at the park and you notice her being kind, or you notice her standing her ground on something in a respectful way. And you can say, if it is with a sibling and maybe they argue quite a bit, but you did catch this one moment where she shared her blanket with the sibling when they were watching a movie, or she did something really sweet, and you just say, "You're so caring. I saw that you shared your blanket with your brother, and I know that that was a big deal. And so thank you for doing that. You have such a kind heart." And so when you recognize those things in her, it really helps. And then taking it a step further is it shows her you notice it, and saying, "How did it feel to do that for him?" Or how did it feel when you stood your ground on the playground and you stood up for yourself and you told the person whatever you were feeling? And then that also opens up another conversation about it, even if it's really quick. So these things don't have to be long, drawn out conversations. These are like 2 to 5 minute interactions. And then at 9 to 11, it's she stands up for a friend that's being teased. Maybe she tells you about that, or maybe you witness it yourself and you say something like, "That took a lot of courage and I'm really proud of you. How did it feel to speak up?" And then she starts telling you how it felt in that moment. And then at 12 to 14, let's say that she sticks to a challenging project or something that she's really been working on for a while, and you say, "You did not give up and on that science project or on that certain thing. And that was so inspiring. Like, you did a great job on that. And I know it felt like you wanted to give up, but you kept going, and that's a big deal." So you could even ask her, "What kept you going when it got tough? Like, what did you do to keep going?" And then she can tell you, and it can really be a good insight for you to know how she gets herself through hard things on her own. And then at 15 to 18, it could be when she gives really good advice to a friend, and you might overhear it. Maybe they're on a FaceTime, or maybe they're on the phone, or maybe you hear it in person, and they're telling something. Like, one time I heard a girl tell another girl about how to handle someone who was being mean to her. And it was legit, like really good advice. And later I was like, that was really good advice that you gave her on that. And that was being a really good friend. So it's saying that and noticing it. And it's not that we're going to follow them around and do this for every single thing they ever do, but it's just catching them in that moment and acknowledging it with them. And then taking it a step further. What made you choose those words to help them? Or how did you know what to say? And then they'll tell you, and you might be surprised by the answer. It might be, "Well, I hear you talk like that," or, "You've always told me to fill in the blank. And I just thought she needed to hear that too." And that's one of those moments you're like, okay, I am doing a good job. And so these are all really simple things that you can do. They're not always easy, but they are simple. And this can help strengthen your mother daughter bond and keep that connection going, even when things feel tough. And so, what this is going to do for you and your daughter's bond, or the girls in your life and you and your bond, is it's going to give that unspoken trust that even in her silence, she knows that you're a safe person for her. And it's also going to give her that emotional resilience. She learns that she can share big feelings and she doesn't have to hide them. She doesn't have to stuff them down. Open communication. These rituals and check-ins are a really good way, and these prompts are a really good way for you to have honest talks when bigger things do come up too, because we want them to know that they can come to us through the little and the big things. And then the healthy repair is when she watches you apologize, it teaches her how to mend her own relationships, and that she should do the same thing. When she knows she's messed up, you make it right and you mend it in a certain way. And so you're modeling that for her and you're teaching it to her, which is really good. So try to show up without pushing. And that's number one for the tip. You're going to show up and you're going to be there without pushing her to spill and tell everything right away. You're going to own your imperfections and be vulnerable with her and repair. You're going to offer if she wants help or if she just wants to talk. You're going to keep those small and reliable rituals that you do to keep checked in. And then you're going to name what you admire in her. And so I want you this week, as a challenge to yourself, to pick one age appropriate step, whether it's a glitter moment or whatever it is, if you want to try and repair this week, or any of the tips. And then if you want to share that with me, I would love to hear from you. I know that we all get busy and you don't always think to do that, but even if, whether you share it with me or not, just knowing that you're trying one new thing or this might be reminding you that these things are all valuable and good to do. And just picking one, because I know that as parents, we're very overwhelmed with all the things we have to do in our own lives, in our careers, and with our daughters. And at the same time, we don't want our bond to slip with our daughters either. So even if it's sharing an ice cream or a lemonade or whatever it is with them, or sitting on the porch or going for a walk, every heartfelt I'm sorry, and every shared yay or glitter moment tells your daughter that she is seen and heard and loved, no matter what age she is. And these are ways that we can show up, and that is ultimately going to strengthen your bond and your relationship with her. So I hope this was helpful. Please send this to someone else that could help. And I hope that you have a great week ahead, bonding with your daughter, checking in with her, and know that you are doing a great job. I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.